And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Global Speedrun Association. We got another Super Mario Odyssey League match coming your way. This one between Rhea and Fur underscore, the heckin' cuties of the league themselves. Joining me on the mic today is Electric again. Once again, how's it going, Electric?
It's going good. After that last race being pretty close, I certainly both have high hopes, but this run has a lot to follow up on. I mean, with a race as tight and close as that one, this run, it certainly has the potential to be as good of a race, but it's going to be hard pressed to match that performance. But we still got just a super exciting matchup here. Rails and for both of them, ultra dominant on the version 1.2 leaderboards. But today they'll be duking it out, looks like on 1.0 with Rail, practicing Sphinx Clip and getting it pretty reliably, it looks like. Although, as soon as I start that statement, already failing one and another. That is a bit unfortunate. While Fur setting up his date for cheat prevention.
Yep, Rhea getting in that practice. Hopefully he's able to iron out all the kinks for this Sphinx Clip. We shall see just how that goes. Kind of funny that both of these guys are actually in sand doing some practice before they are ready and good to go here. But it looks like they are setting themselves up, going to the starting line here, going to the title screen, and they will be good to go. Now, how much do you know about these runners, Electric? Do you have any predictions?
I think it's going to come down to I think Rail has a little bit of a just general edge of his potential skill ceiling, but I think Fur has demonstrated a better consistency throughout races. So I would really be looking for how Rail plays throughout this entire first half to see where his momentum is really at today. Because if he's playing at a super high level, then Fur's definitely going to have his work cut out for him. But if this isn't one of his on days, it could definitely be a race that swings very, very heavily in one direction pretty quickly. So really just kind of depends. And we see for taking a moment to actually reload the game. This actually, I learned yesterday, saves about a second by not doing a cold load, as it would be called. Rail didn't have to do that because he switched from another file. But because Fur had just started the game from being completely closed, if he hadn't done that, the first load from this cutscene skip would take an extra second and a half.
Exactly right.
And it's amazing that we're at the level with this game that we're actually having to worry about things like that.
Yep, every second counts, especially when it comes to situations like this where, we're at such an optimized level in this game. And if you can take a free second, you might as well. So getting that cold load out of the way and taking the profile right from the fastest possible situation is obviously what you want to do.
Yep. And they'll be starting off in Cap Kingdom now, which, again, if you want to talk optimization, this kingdom is absolutely filled with it. I mean, from the very get-go, people have been looking for ways to bring the time of this kingdom below 230, and you'd be hard-pressed to find any runner worth their salt that can't manage to swing a sub 230 pretty easily every single run by now.
Yeah, if you see a 230 at this level of optimization, you are more or less likely doing something wrong. It's definitely a good beginner time to kind of push for that sub 230, but when it comes to the top level of Odyssey play that we are seeing from these guys, you definitely want to see somewhere in the ballpark of like a 224, sub 224. Anything more than that is definitely going to set you back in a race. And right out of the gate, we see Fur underscore going for that initial attempt at kind of the roll boost strategy across the water. Didn't quite get the right timing, though, so Rhea was actually able to take a bit of a lead coming out of this frog room here. And he's going to be the first to attempt this left side trick. Going to be nailing it just fine. Fur underscore right behind him. Rhea about a second ahead into the topper fight. First hit looks fine. Going to be setting up for the fast hit. Rhea did have a bit of a weird line there, but is able to get the hit just fine and is going to keep that 1 second lead going into Cascade.
Yeah, it's certainly kind of unfortunate how Nintendo kind of made the go fast button, as it were, a motion control. The strat Fur was going for, you have to really precisely roll boost on that little slope piece there. And it's really difficult to managed to time the roll boost just right. If it were a button, it'd be a lot easier to find a distinct visual cue, but because it's a motion control, you're having to do it just a little bit earlier and still hope that it processes just in time. And it's just it's such a hassle to deal with. And it does have to be mentioned, Fur, I believe, is still running on Joy-Cons, so motion controls for him are a little bit more kind of iffy here and there. With the two controllers, I found that there's actually a bit more of a range of input drops for whatever reason. I guess because the system is having an interface with two devices instead of just one. But
when you throw into the mix the fact that just using motion controls for several different outputs is quite frustrating in itself. So not only can you spin throw, but you can also up throw, you can also regular throw, and when it comes to Joy-Cons, you can also down throw. So this whole combination of things can make motion controls a very frustrating thing to have to deal with. Of course, you throw into that mix that it is our main source of movement as well. If you're holding the crouch button and you shake the controller, that is when you get the rolling animation. So, you know, combine all of these things, motion controls, it's actually very hard to play fast without them.
Yep.
For actually, very strangely, they're taking a hit from this here Chain Chompykins, as he's known. Very uncharacteristic. I don't really know what happened there. His jump looked okay, but did end up taking damage and is just going to be slightly set back to Rhea after this fight.
Yeah, he either just missed the window just a little bit, or it was definitely a late jump, or just an absurdly early jump. Because if you get anywhere really near Mario coming down on top of the chain chomp, that'll be enough to go ahead and stop it in its tracks without damage. But somehow falling down to kind of the, I think below the top quarter or so of the chain chomp. And let's see how they go ahead and handle this subsequent chest clip movement and Big Moon on the cliff movement. Opting for just a little bit of a difference with Rails going for that look like a spin pound first, with Fur just going ahead and doing a cat third dive. Oh, yeah, but Rails missing that clip.
Reyes set up for the chest clip a little bit too far to the left. There's a lot more collision going on the more left inside that cave that you go, so you have to kind of battle with a couple of extra ceilings the further left you go. So setting up on the right side, definitely the optimal strategy there. Fur underscore does indeed grab the chest clip and successfully pull it off. So he's going to be making up a couple seconds here. Still looks like about a 5-second difference between these two.
Yep. And we'll see if that can be maintained going through sand, which, as many people have said before, is really where the race starts to pick up majorly.
Certainly. Sand Kingdom, one of my favorites to run in a lot of different categories. In fact, it's very fun to revisit in the post-game. Lots of very cool moons, lots of cool sub-areas. And when it comes to the shorter categories, you do make a very risky jaunt through a lot of this world. You do some strategies like Dram Strat, and you've got the Sphinx Clip, obviously Jaxi Skip. While it isn't very intimidating anymore, there is instant death poison surrounding that entire platform, so you do have to be wary of that. And
Yep,
it's a kingdom that you just have to make sure everything goes right.
Yep, and especially too, it's a very modular kingdom. There are so many options. There are a lot of moons that are very, very close to each other in terms of how long they take. And a lot of different options for routing in different cycling objects, like the bird, for instance. I think there are 3 different spots that you could go pick up the bird, and we see these guys picking it up at the very end of the run, confirming now. Optionally, I think it doesn't lose a whole... It might only lose like a couple of seconds. You can actually get the bird right after that pipe section, but it requires a pretty difficult, precise triple jump that normally you end up falling out of the air and having to do a side flip to get back up in the air to grab the moon, which wastes a lot of time.
Yep, that's been dubbed the Hayano Bird. It is a strategy you only see in 1.2, because in 1.0 you could go for the Sphinx Clip, which does set up a recycle, I suppose, of the bird itself. and you can pick it up in the Oasis. Now here, Rhea, we see actually taking a bonk, did try to go for the ice jam situation there. I have not seen him go for it in previous races, I could be wrong, but looking to kind of take an edge over Fur, and actually to his detriment, missing Dram Strat puts him behind now by about 5 seconds.
Yep, just really handing Fur the lead, Fur not really having to do anything super special other than just perform at a high level. Gotta love when these runners are able to buffer a spin in the middle of just a roll. That is precision right there.
Yeah, very fancy stuff. As we approach the Sphinx clip, this here 1.0 exclusive trick. Fur underscore the first in, and Rhea right behind him. We'll see if that practice earlier is going to play in handy, and it does. He's in the room. Fur underscore collecting some coins. Actually looked a little bit skimpy there.
Yeah, but
We'll see what his
also,
coin count looks like. 113.
Man, okay, Rhea getting really lucky with Cappy's home there. Sometimes Cappy just doesn't decide to home in at all on anything, and so that looked like what was about to happen. That he was only going to make out of that room with like 3 coins. But Fur, even though he made it out kind of skimpy, going to be able to make up for it pretty easily. Since he's got the 50 coin chest coming up here, that 50 coins really makes a huge uptick in the number of runs that would normally have to be reset just due to a really bad Sphinx room.
Yep, you're not wrong about that. And as far as going into the Sphinx room, you're usually pretty A-okay for the first moon. It's the second one you have to worry about, the Snow Kingdom moon. There is no real backup as far as coins are concerned on your way through the later portion of the game, so you do have to make sure you get enough from the Sphinx room to kind of cover your bases both ways. But if you're leaving Sand Kingdom around 170 coins, as long as you don't incur any huge deaths or take a couple falls, then you should be okay. So these guys probably going to be okay. Worst case scenario, Fur can always go to Seaside first.
Yeah, and Seaside has so many ambient coins, even in the reroute, mainly due to that one tunnel that you go through with the Cheap. And we're seeing both our guys grab the bird right now in its optimal position due to the second Sphinx clip getting you so quickly through that hidden moon in the sand, I believe is the name of it, or something like that.
The ground pound moon right before this one?
Or no. I mean way back, the one where you have to sink down in the quicksand to get under the wall. Since you Sphinx clip into that room this time around, yeah.
Yep. Avoiding having to sink down the normal way, which is something you do have to do in 1.2. It is a little bit slower, so that Sphinx clip route does save quite a bit of time. But just like that, these guys are changing leads as we go into Lake Kingdom, and we're going to see some interesting things here. Fur underscore has proven that he does go for the late clip. Rhea, on the other hand, is kind of hit or miss. Doesn't really, no real indication whether he's going to try it or not. We'll have to see when he gets there, basically. But Fur underscore holding the lead, so if he does take a while on this late clip and Rhea for some reason decides not to and take the safe way, that might just be all it takes to bring this back together.
Yep, let's see how exactly it shakes out. But we've seen varying degrees of success between different races with late clip. I mean, it can't be overstated how difficult of a trick it is, mainly because of how precise the out of bounds movement has to be. You have a very thin margin between your 3 options of popping back in bounds, ending up bonking on another surface texture, or just being right where you need to be. And unfortunately, once you get between the wall, you have to do a non-neutral jump to actually get to the proper position to jump up to do the wall jump to the checkpoint. You're about to see it. It makes a lot more sense when you're seeing it visually. So for going for the setup now, not quite liking his Cap's initial position, but getting the fake clip there, rolling along the side. Rail actually going for it. Let's see if he can show off. Okay, he's showing off what it should look like there. That very slight nudge to the left, absolutely vital for this trick to work. Jumping up into that wall jump and hitting that checkpoint. That's really what makes this trick so fast. Popping back in bounds.
But Rhea missed the checkpoint.
Wait, really? I thought he got the text. Wow.
Rhea missed the checkpoint.
Bad.
So he has no choice but to go through and do the regular route here.
And that's why he really immediately swam back in bounds. Okay, I was a little bit confused by that. I was kind of like, wait a minute, I saw that. But we see Fur doing it the way that it's intended. So the big reason that this saves time both is you don't have to fight Rango here, which in itself saves a couple of seconds, and you have a little added bonus of you get the checkpoint text here rather than in Metro Kingdom, which saves about a second and a half later on in the run. But really the biggest thing is just skipping all of the cutscenes associated with that brutal fight and being able to just go for the moon up there in the secret area, the moon lower down that would normally be in the kind of city hall trench area, and then finally the secret room. But that is an unfortunate way for Rhea to lose time to get such a picture perfect late clip and then have it fail like that. Just not quite enough height off of that wall jump. But yeah, the really, really difficult part is both the precision of that initial cap throw to get into that corner, and then also just that slightly out of neutral jump to get to where you can jump for that wall jump.
That's going to give Fur underscore the lead coming out of Lake Kingdom. He did have quite a bit of trouble trying to get the late clip to work, got even one fake clip, but as a result of Rhea missing the checkpoint, he is going to unfortunately take the time loss coming out of Lake Kingdom.
Yeah, taking a very distinct backseat to Fur's honestly pretty stellar run so far. And I mean, it's really a lot of it has come down to the major tricks that Ray has missed. Ray has missed the Dram Strat back in Sand Kingdom, now missing late clip here. He's losing time to Fur's ultimately pretty good execution. There's been a couple bobbles here and there. Obviously, that late clip attempt not completely perfect on Fur's side, but you know, ultimately Fur being a force to be reckoned with, and Rhea just not quite answering. Like what we were saying before the race started, Rhea a very momentum-based player, and it seems momentum is just not with him at the moment. But that could very easily change. Very nice advanced start to this kingdom, sorry, for these guys. Words getting a little bit mixed up in the commentator's head. It's like a bit of a word blender in there. So what you see though with this advanced one, by picking up that rock a lot earlier on, it makes the rolling rock at the end, I think probably a good 4 or 5 seconds faster to pick up, because you're not having to drag it all the way over to a different rock to break it. And that's honestly something I really wish I knew casually, was that you could break it with another rock. I remember kicking it like 17 times just to get it to break, and it was so annoying.
Yeah, the game doesn't really give you any indication that that is something that you can do. So finding that out as a speedrun tactic is quite handy for sure, and also makes some other categories a lot more optimal as well. There are quite a few creative ways to break open rocks. Now, here we kind of are in an interesting territory. It looks like Rhea has about a 3-second lead here, but Fur underscore actually going for the tree route here, going to be skipping that Piranha Plant Moon later on in the kingdom. So even though Rhea does look to appear to have a visual edge, it will come down to Fur's execution of the tree route, and he will be making up that ground again once we pass that.
Yep, and that Piranha Plant Moon skip, it's really the best thing that you can skip is a moon that has a cutscene with it in this game. And in particular, like with this case, it's the fact that it's a story moon. Like if we could skip either of like the Poison Room or the Goomba Room in Snow Kingdom and their associated story moons, it'd be a pretty huge benefit to those kingdoms' time, since I think each story moon cutscene is a good at least 20 seconds total, right?
Depends on if there's any cutscenes following it, which in this case there is. All right, Fur underscore doing the very smart thing here, grabbing that checkpoint on the way by. That is going to prevent him from going all the way back to the shop if he were to take his tumble here. Of course, at an optimal level, you do not want to see a fall here, but you know, this already has happened to Fur, and he is probably playing it as smart as he possibly can. And here we go, see him going for the Flower Road skip. Rhea stuck in that cutscene, as we mentioned earlier, and is going to have to wait for this kind of cage to break open, revealing the P-switch, and then a little bit of like a panoramic view of the Wooded Kingdom for a moment. And now he's finally able to do the Flower Road skip himself. So yeah, Fur underscore retaining his lead, essentially, visually, and yeah, he's out ahead and in the tower.
Yep, and it's You know, it's kind of funny that you have to wait for that P-switch cage to break, considering you never touch the P-switch at this level. And Flower Road Skip, one of those tricks with so many different ways to do it. And for demonstrating when you reroute the kingdom just a little bit, you get what's honestly a much easier way of doing it than both the triple jump dive method and the roll cancel method. And then Fur going out for his last 3, gonna be getting his last nut here. I think that with the nut clip route, we're kind of discussing this before myself and another commentator, whether I know that initially there were 7 nuts in a route, and I think the nut clip route actually with this one and with Fur going for the extra tree nut, 2 extra throughout this route. So
yeah, he is going for the tree route as well. So let's have a look. We have the tree, we have the tunnel, we have the nut on the tall fence, we have the nut on the overlooking the cliff, we have the nut in the maze, nut at the dead end, we have nut on the crumbling tower, nut inside the tower, and nut around the bend. So that is 9 in total.
That's a lot of nuts for one kingdom.
That's a lot of nuts.
Can we see some simp nuts in the chat? I think at least one is notable at this point. Let's see if Rhea can match that really nice flooded pipes from Fur.
Yeah, Fur's got to be really happy with that Wood Kingdom. It's really no mistakes to be heard of. I think he was kind of playing it safe for the most part, did grab the checkpoint, kind of took some, maybe just some more consistent lines rather than going for some of the riskier things. And that's honestly the best idea in Wooded Kingdom. You really do not want to go out of your way to make anything bad happen while you're in there. So props to Fur, going to be coming out of Wooded Kingdom ahead here by just over 20 seconds, I think.
Yeah, meanwhile, unfortunately, Rhea actually having to go for the poverty cycle in the flooded pipes there, missing that. I think it was the cap through didn't quite go through properly the first time. Because I know he got through the first half on pace, and then something went wrong in the second half to cause him to be unable to make that first jump. Oh, no, I know what it was, actually. He got an extra air twirl instead of a wall kick at the very, very end. Had to wait for the fuzzy cycle to come back around to be able to get up to the end pipes. Now, Fur going to be taking care of Cloud Bowser a little bit early and going for this optimization of pushing Bowser into one of the faraway cages, forcing him to jump only 1 space rather than the standard 3. If you don't go behind him, it's very easy to get him to jump 2 spaces, but it's very, very difficult, if at all possible, to get him to jump 1. And not quite getting the strat a second time, just barely off, it looked like. Rhea doing the same here. And of course, on this third hit, you don't have to worry about that at all, since no matter where you hit him towards, the fight will just end.
Yep, no need for any sort of manipulation strategies. No matter which direction he goes, he's going towards the ship, initiating the cutscene, and on your way to Lost Kingdom.
Rhea saving that cheeky about half a second, I think, by getting that skip twice. And meanwhile, Fur going to be starting out Lost Kingdom. Let's see how exactly the Purple Meme Kingdom decides to treat him today. And the Cap Vault looks good. Going to be moving into his first moon here. You get to breathe a little bit going into these next 3 or 4, but then it starts to get a little bit more tight for air. Very nice optimization there, using his cap throw to actually claim that butterfly moon early. And then the spin pound off that thin platform. Super risky gameplay, but very well paying off for him at the moment.
Liking this movement from Fur here. He's going to be going into a dive, cap return, jump, and then dive onto the tree branch here. Very smooth, very slick from Fur underscore. And
I just can't believe he's doing all this on Joy-Cons. I can't even do anything like this on a Pro controller.
Yep, he's definitely a nut, that's for sure. It's hard to really imagine, even somebody who does play at a top level on a Pro-Con, that you can make that happen on a Joy-Con. When I was basically on my flight to Washington for GDQ, I had to play on Joy-Cons because of the airplane and having to play in portable mode, and man, that was an experience. Not only was it more or less motion control-less because of sitting in an airplane, shaking your controller around. It's probably not the most optimal thing that you can do, but it was also on Joy-Cons, and it was a very weird feeling, to say the least.
Yeah, the sticks are very distinctly different. It's certainly, you can feel that the center of rotation is completely different and completely off. Like the sticks are a very, I don't really know what to call the design, because it's a very distinct design that I don't think I've seen on any other product. And they just generally, they almost feel like you're snapping them in half when you go to use them a lot of the time.
Yeah, they are very tiny too. I couldn't imagine, like, my hands are not huge, but I can imagine that somebody who does have kind of monstrous hands would have a very tough time playing on Joy-Cons.
Yeah, when I briefly tried playing on Joy-Cons, I was having to use the wrist straps that they came with, and I had to use them basically backwards. So, like, normally you're supposed to put the loop on the end of the strap to put your hand into, and I made the loop on the very opening of the strap so that it would, like, hold the controller into my hand. And even then, they would still pretty well, like, start sliding out of my hand after, like, 10 minutes. It was pretty terrible. I'm not gonna lie. Oh man, and chat informing us that Fur is on his 6th pair of Joy-Cons. That man is dedicated. That is.
It doesn't surprise me in the slightest, though. They are quite a bit more fragile than the Pro controllers. I mean, like I mentioned yesterday, I have gone through 2 Pro controllers myself, so it does not surprise me at all that Fur underscore is already on his 6th pair. That is a lot of controllers, but thankfully they are a little bit more affordable than the Pro controllers are, so I guess it kind of balances itself.
I mean, actually, for pairs, I think they're still 70.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
And he is American, right? So
yes,
that's about $350 that we're no, actually $420, a nice Mimi number that he has spent on Joy-Cons for speedrunning this game. Just wow.
For underscore taking that optimal path from the chest moon to the exit of City Hall. No other runner is really attempting that. A very scary jump. And
yeah, and as you can see there, just barely makes it.
Yeah, every single time is always a very sketchy time, but Fur does it with such confidence. So I'm going to be edging out that 0.5 second time save from that. You're going to see Rhea take the much safer approach, getting the higher ground here so that he can make the jump across without any issues.
Yep, letting Anakin know that it's over by obtaining that higher ground and using it for his long jumping advantage. And Fur almost into the second cycle of this Wiggler fight. Let's see what type of cycle he decides to give us today. As we stated so many times, if he loops over and over in himself, the game just cannot handle those overlapping hitboxes. It's weird. It doesn't quite make sense. It'll like register non-hits whenever there are very obvious hits on both of them. But it gives us a straight line and Fur just straight shooting it, not even needing to move a muscle. Just picture perfect position on the ground allows him to just sharp shoot all of those segments on his first pass, not a single wasted shot. We're exactly looking at Mr. Economical right here.
Exactly what you like to see from a Wiggler cycle there. For underscore getting exactly what you want. Rhea getting a pretty similar situation here. Oh, just missing one orb, but these hitboxes bullying him a little bit, but he is able to finish off just fine. But yeah, Fur is running away with this as far as this race is concerned so far. He definitely is getting the better hand when it comes to RNG and maybe just some of the better lines and some situations where maybe Rhea is taking an unfortunate bonk here and there. So stretching his lead out just a tiny bit more as we enter Day Metro. And this is a place where I would say that it's probably one of my favorite kingdoms to run in this entire category.
Yep, I can definitely agree with that. So much is offered within it that just allows for a lot of optimization and just a lot of exciting gameplay. And, you know, I started thinking about it. I think what it really is that makes the Wiggler's hitboxes so bad is they're actually pyramids, I'm pretty sure. Because as you saw with Rail there, he effectively had his shot at one of the orbs blocked by the one adjacent to it. I think, like, somehow the hitbox sticks out a bit from the orb so that you could manage to, land a shot on it that ends up killing the shot before it hits the intended orb. Certainly kind of a lot of design choices in this game are a little bit like, huh? And that's definitely one of them. Another one is just the way the tank moves. It's very, very sensitive. I mean, I feel like it had to be intentional, but oh no, Rail accidentally early capturing that pipe there and having to flick back. I think that may end up resulting in, yup, the taxi troll. Look at that taxi being right in the wrong position for him, literally right in his way, going to have to kind of go behind it in order to make his way over to the secondary pipe. Oh, it actually just barely clears him in advance there, getting pretty lucky. That taxi is a pretty good indicator overall of how that first half of this kingdom went. If the taxi was behind you, then you know you did a pretty great job. And of course, both these guys going for the musician's first movement that has pretty well pervaded the top 10 of both Modern and Legacy.
Yep, it's not necessarily a very hard strategy to go for, so if you start implementing it early, there really is no reason to kind of look back on the way we used to do it. But essentially, what happened was we would warp out from that girder initially and go directly to the top of City Hall that you see Fur doing here, and grab these moons that you're going to see him go for, and then leave the sub area with the crowd and start collecting musicians afterwards. And this method saves, the way that these guys are doing it now, saves about 2.5 seconds, so it is worth to implement and not very difficult to execute on.
Yep, and it's a nice, convenient warp. It you think it pretty well results in you mainly just having to switch around when you warp to the top of the City Hall building and when you warp to the Odyssey again. Because I think the actual warp places are the same.
The idea here is that you're eliminating one loading zone. So you, in the old route, what you would do is you would warp from the City Hall directly to the Odyssey after collecting the last musician, but you would have to walk back through the door in this sub area that Fur is entering. So that would be one extra loading zone, whereas with this new proposed method, it's not very new anymore, I suppose, you would warp directly from this sub area to the Odyssey, eliminating the need to go through that one door.
I see what oh, I'm so sorry about that mic hit there. I see what you're saying now.
Yeah, and that's partially the reason that it is any faster.
All right, so Fur making his way back into the Odyssey while Rhea still has to warp back there after collecting this last moon. And gonna be moving now into Snow Kingdom. Let's see what these guys have in store for this next kind of half of the run. We're talking about this in the last race. This kind of forms a pretty natural halfway point in the run. Especially when you have this, again, kind of repeating structure of two smaller kingdoms, large kingdom that comes up with snow through Luncheon.
I'm not a big fan of Snow Kingdom when it comes to speedrunning. However, if I were to pick a category where I like it the most, it is probably any percent. You do have to get some slow moons as a result of there not being many fast ones available. However, the movement in those particular sub-areas can be very satisfying to pull off. You combine it with things like Snowdram and things like the Moon Clip, and you have what is potentially a very fun kingdom if you're able to kind of optimize it to the best of your ability.
Yep, let's see how these guys manage to take those. Oh, first taking that bonk there. No.
did try to go for the wall jumpless setup there. Didn't work out in his favor. Did take a bonk on the railing. Not a big deal. Just falls back, has to reset up here. Now, I don't know if either of these guys are really keen on going for this moon clip. We're about to see, though. Fur underscore setting up, does get the backflip. Looks like he is kind of nudged into the wall, but I don't think it's enough. So he's going to have to take the slower approach going down across the railing.
Yeah, we'll see if Rail's able to match that, but typically, as we were kind of talking about last race, you normally see that as kind of a YOLO, like, we'll just go for it, and if it happens, it happens. It only saves about a second, I believe, you get it, and it can still be a bit risky just because of your potential to fall on the death plane after you get out of bounds.
I mean, depending on your setup and depending on your movement afterwards, you can save about 2 seconds, but attempting it really doesn't hurt. You're only losing about 0.5 if you do not get it. So, yeah, about a delta of about 2.5 seconds between getting it and missing it and having to go take the walk of shame, essentially. Rhea not bothering with the risk at all. He's just going to be taking this the slow way. And now this is an interesting strategy that I've seen Rhea take every single time he goes through this room. The typical movement being a triple jump setup, and as the stairs are moving, you initiate that triple jump and carry your momentum forward. Rhea actually makes it to that stairwell fast enough that he's able to do a spin pound off of it and use the momentum from the stairs. Very interesting setup, one that I haven't really seen from anybody else, but it works for him.
Yep, and super fast. I mean, it's a really cool thing, I think, that you're able to carry on the momentum from that block push throughout any given jump. Because it's a really, really intense source of horizontal momentum. It's the little things like that, whenever they pop up, that just really make this game satisfying and just super fast in its movement. And we see Fur in the middle of the story moon cutscene for the room that Rhea is just now finishing. So Fur still maintaining that pretty decent grip on the lead. We'll see if that continues, though, into Seaside Kingdom with the reroute. Reroute should not be causing any problems for these guys, but you never know. It is a new thing, and as with all new things, it can potentially cause problems.
Yeah, as far as we've seen in this league so far, we do have a 100% consistency rate amongst all the runners for not only executing the clip, but making sure they don't clip back inbounds after grabbing that first moon as well. So, you know, anything can happen in these leagues. We've seen some pretty wacky stuff happen. We've seen some falls in the out of bounds section in Wooded that you don't really see at the top level anymore. You've seen lots of snow dram fails. And as of course I say that, we are approaching snow dram, but Fur clears it by a landslide. Absolute phenomenal snow dram setup by Fur there. And he's going to be flying through the stage and out of here. And before Ray is even able to set up for his first attempt.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly obvious the amount of time that Fur's put into that trick, and it shows just, man, whenever these guys are able to get this so consistently, cleanly first try, I'm sure it must be satisfying from their end to just know how much their hard work has paid off.
Ray keeping pace, though, did get it on his first try and is going to be approaching Seaside along with Fur. So still keeping pace. This race really could go either way still. We're looking at a difference of about 25 to 30 seconds still.
Yeah, a little bit of a gap, but certainly nothing that cannot be overcome with just a couple of little mistakes that can maybe cause death, maybe just cause a ridiculous fall and a lot of out of the way movement to get back up. Whatever the case may be, it is certainly not over for Rhea if he pulls out his A game for the rest of this run. All right, and we're going to be going into the Gashoon room now. And nice long jump there.
And now this is where the route diverges from what it used to look like. So not going for the Notes Moon at all anymore. It is a little bit too far out of the way. And the very slick down throw strategy to capture that cheap, you know, flexing the pro cons just a little bit further here. Definitely what you like to see. and he is going to be making his way through the water section here. Now, this route does look rather similar to the one that we had already previous. He's going to be grabbing this one in the chest, taking the Cheep Cheep along into this hidden corridor over here, grabbing the moon that's inside here, grabbing a couple quick moons up on the surface of the water again, and then once we have gathered the northern reaches of I can't remember the name of the place.
Bubblaine, I think
Bubblaine, yes, that's right. Once we've gathered that moon, we will be doing the trick that we have been talking about and hyping up so much. Again, we haven't really seen any fails with it yet. It is incredibly easy to pull off. Definitely, if you are looking to start running this game, it doesn't make any sense to continue trying to go for the old route because it is actually extremely easy to pull off. So we're going to see Fur approach it here. Basically, kind of go towards this little nook in the out of bounds wall, go away from the Cheep Cheep and capture it again, and then it just kind of gives you a little bit of extra out of bounds momentum, and you're able to slip beneath the wall.
And it really is just a matter of putting the Cheep Cheep effectively right on the area that the blue stops, and it turns into just straight up yellow. And then by doing that recapture, you're able to slide over that physical barrier. It's amazing how the rock would kind of imply that there's a lot more solid area out of bounds, but Nintendo really put just about no effort into actually making this wall solid whatsoever. So very, very easy clip to get down here. And this moon's hitbox is just huge whenever you use your spin attack like that. And thus we've integrated yet another Sphinx into this run.
Yep, just about every Sphinx in the game gets a kind of showcase within the any percent route nowadays, because you have the Sphinx clip in sand, and you have obviously this new Sphinx dip, as it's being named, in Seaside, and then you also, on top of all that, do the Moon Cave skip, which of course very prominently features the Sphinx at the very end of the run. The only one that we do not really touch, in fact we outright ignore, is the one in Wooded.
Yep. And I think it might be appropriate now to call the one on the moon the Sphinx skip in accordance with the other two names.
Yeah, the Sphinx skip, I suppose. You got a Sphinx clip and a Sphinx skip, and then a Sphinx dip, and then a Moon Cave skip.
And Fur almost taking a dip within the Luncheon Kingdom stew right there. Not even quite sure how he managed to get all the way over on that side of the salt pile, especially considering he did the triple jump salt pile strat that got him pretty far down that hill already. So very, very weird mistakes there, but managing to recover before anything completely absurd came of it. But just very, very, very strange. Very strange is the only thing that can be used to describe that. And I think it's fair that we... Oh, go ahead.
Luckily, he is going to be just fine into this boss fight here. Rhea having a little bit better luck with the salt pile triple.
Yeah, able to save at least a good, I would say probably 6 seconds, because that was a pretty big bobble, even requiring like a ledge grab, and then I think maybe even another wall kick to get back up. But I was gonna say it's pretty appropriate that the Wooded Sphinx doesn't actually get integrated into the route, considering the other three give you moons. He's just like, okay, now I'll let you in the kingdom, lol.
Yep, basically. So, you know, despite the fumbles on either end, this race staying very tight. Rhea just one story moon collection behind here.
Now, both of them in, or Rhea going to be in very soon, rather, this lava room. I've always thought the movement here was so satisfying, the way these guys do it with the spin pound and then cap throwing for the roll cancel to just quickly redirect your momentum. That's just a textbook case of where a roll cancel is so useful. And that's really a room to show off just how much work you've put into your roll cancels generally, I'd say. And Rhea just barely clipping it a tad short, but just look at how fast that was, man. Then actually going for this front of mountain route, do you happen to know how much that saves?
The front of the mountain, the way that Rhea is doing it is actually slower. I'm not sure if he took any damage. Usually the reason that you go around that way is to collect the checkpoint in case you've taken damage in the lava room. So yeah, the way that Rhea is doing it actually a little bit slower.
I don't think he took damage, but yeah, my bad. I didn't realize it was slower like that. I guess I would have figured it was faster just because of the linear movement and well, he did still have to take the fork flick, so having some issues with this golden turnip grab and ending up missing the pot. That's a pretty rare mistake. That pot is pretty lenient with where exactly you can throw the turnip to actually get inside of it.
Yeah, just getting bullied by vegetables throughout this Luncheon Kingdom, unfortunately. Hopefully, that does not continue, because we do have one particularly scary trick coming up that does involve some more turnips. So hopefully no more turnip bullying going on Rhea's side. Fur underscore just leaving the fork flick room here. Very solid looking fork room from Fur. So now he's going to be approaching this turnip clip that we are speaking about now. And the execution of this has kind of tripped up some runners in this league so far.
Yeah, and getting a very, very nice start with that lava bubble. But going to be having to grab this turnip now, going for the all reliable. As Rhea finishing out his fork flicking room. Making sure that Spiny is out of the picture, not going to cause any sorts of issues.
For his initial setup there, not looking fantastic, so he did have to readjust, but thankfully did get it on the readjust there first try. So all is well in the land of Fur. Rhea grabbing the golden turnip for the people, and he's going to be next setting it up. His throw looks extremely good, so all he has to do is get that Spiny out of the way. Oh, maybe the turnip is a little bit too far, but he's still going to go for it, and he does.
It's in! Wow, that was lucky. That was lucky. We're pretty much only that couple of cutscenes ahead now. It can be pretty difficult to actually preserve your momentum through that impossible jump that Fur just did there. Let's see how he's able to do with this. Okay. That dive of death there is... I don't know if it's particularly scary for these runners, but certainly diving on that little piece of geometry as a viewer is always at least a little bit of a monk ass.
Certainly. And there definitely is a point in every kind of new speedrunners... Oh my goodness, Rhea giving me a bit of a heart attack there with that dive across to the platform. But yeah, when you first start implementing this trick, you definitely lose a couple runs to unoptimal jump distances and things like that. So can certainly be scary when you are first learning how to do it. But these guys showing no troubles with it at all.
Just breezing right through this Luncheon Kingdom. And Fur going to be making his way into Ruin now officially. We've pretty well just got 16 minutes left of this race.
Yep, give or take. That's about what we're looking at. Fur underscore appears to be on what I can only imagine to be a low 101 pace still. Only minor mistakes throughout the run. Nothing really to kind of scoff at. He's definitely performing very, very well. Rhea, meanwhile, again, same thing, really. Both guys have had a very solid execution run. Just Rhea making slightly bigger mistakes throughout the run. Nothing to really kind of point out as a major issue for either of them, though.
And that's what you kind of end up accepting when you get to this really, really top level. With the exception of a couple of runners that just have a couple of consistency issues, you really never see anyone losing more than maybe 20 seconds at a time. But it's just been an accumulation of the smaller Victoria this time around that has caused them to have just such a massive deficit going into these last couple. Fur going ahead and getting all of his hearts open early. Personally, I end up having to save some of them for every single one of the individual phases. And opting for that backflip movement there, that's pretty interesting there. Saves you from having to deal with timing and positioning yourself at the start of a triple jump, but at the cost of being... If you're just a little bit too late with it, you actually get shocked by the dragon on the ground, so... Definitely... If you're really comfortable with the timing, it's better to do it the way that Ray is demonstrating right now. And Fur going ahead and knocking down the second phase there.
Yeah, the the ruined section, you know, it's an extremely exciting time for the run. This is where all the magic happens, the do or die.
Yep.
A
lot of very important tricks and strats coming all together at once. Took the community years of work to get to this level of optimization.
Certainly. We all had to learn how to play Demon Soul in order to do this fight correctly. So there is definitely an extra level of optimization involved in this fight. So, you know, kudos to these runners. A death here does cost about 3 minutes, which is very, very costly. And so seeing them play at such an optimized level really is impressive.
Yeah, and it's honestly really fortunate that they give you 4 hearts on this level because of all the phases that you have to deal with. And I mean, you'd be very hard pressed if you're actually playing well to end up reasonably dipping below 2 hearts at any given time. Especially like on the last phase, I can see dipping down to 1 health on the very, very end. But other than that, like it's very rare for you to have any reason to dip below 2. But you do have to kind of wonder too, where exactly did the dragon get thrown into Odyssey? I feel like it was like I can't exactly call it an afterthought, but I feel like it wasn't originally destined for this game. It just seems a little bit odd.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't feel like it fits. Could just be Nintendo trying to flex their graphical capabilities for this game and what this engine was fully capable of doing. It doesn't sound completely far-fetched for Nintendo to do, but that being said, the boss is out of the way. The dragon has been defeated, and we are on our way to Bowser's Kingdom. And, you know, this is the make or break moment for Fur Underscore. He is holding on to his lead, albeit by about 30 seconds. It's really going to come down to his flawless execution to hold on to that. We've said it before, we'll say it again. And if anything like yesterday's races are of any example, you know, a minute even is not really that much time when it comes to the late game, because mistakes in this late game can be the most costly.
Oh yeah, I mean, falling off the mech once could cause Fur his entire lead and then some. It could result in Fur possibly losing out on even the like initial losers brackets of points. Like and that's just one given situation. Any mistake on Moonskip is going to cost you a few seconds, just like that. If it goes really badly and the rhythm is just not in your head at the moment for whatever reason, you could lose handfuls of seconds to that. Just bam, gone. Mm-hmm. And it's all of the tricks throughout this, and especially we've seen in a number of races, including one particular racer whose name potentially rhymes with losing runs to 2D Skipquan. It's you know there's just a lot in this last 10 minutes that can cause your run to just all of a sudden fall apart.
Yep, and we have seen just about anything and everything from these races so far, like I said before. So 2D skip deaths has happened on multiple occasions, you know, failing some major tricks and some components, diving off the stage in places where, you know, you've never done that before. It's kind of all in the bag when it comes to these league races, and there's so much on the line, so much at stake, all leading up, of course, to the PACE event coming up in April, which will showcase the finals for this tournament, or for this league rather, as well as the Celeste and the Super Mario 64 Division 170 Star League, as well as some, you know, usual showcases for some other speed games. And that stream will be going 24 hours for the 4 days of the event, from the 24th to the 28th, I believe. Something like that, maybe the 25th to the 28th. I could be having my days just a little bit mixed up there, but ! tickets if you want to learn more about the event and register yourself. It will be great. You will get to meet some top level speedrunners there, myself included, as well as I believe Electric will be there as well.
Yep, but of course, and I can't wait to see all of y'all there as well. It's going to be a pretty awesome, honestly pretty historical event, being kind of the real first professional speedrunning racing event live like that. So yeah, it's going to be an absolute blast, and I can't wait to see as many of you there as possible.
You're absolutely right about that. So, I mean, speedrunning in itself is still quite a bit of a niche market, I would say. It's not necessarily the most popular video gaming kind of spectrum. However, with things like this, we're definitely moving in the right direction. A lot of speedrunning events of the past have been kind of showcase events, doing things for charity, whereas this is the very first event of its kind where we are kind of pitting speedrunners against each other for the sake of competition, and I think it is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, but certainly opens up the door for a new kind of speedrunner to really come to the forefront. One that isn't necessarily about just these really wicked optimized strats for insane world record PBs, but more about just insane consistency to make sure to have that best possible outcomes in league races like this. Kind of walk that very thin line between having a super, super fast run and having a really consistent run every single time you hit the race floor. So it's definitely a new dimension when you don't have that reset button to rely on for whenever you just get kind of a sloppy start to a run. You just have to roll with the punches. And honestly, that's something that a lot of top runners in some various games just aren't exactly the greatest at. And I think league races, as they become a bigger and bigger thing, that'll kind of get ironed out more and more.
Yeah, it definitely takes a bit of a different mindset, It's very, I wouldn't say easy. Itself cannot be very easy at the top level, but there is a bit of a safety net when it comes to, okay, well, I just lost 10 seconds there, so I can just hit the reset button and start at the beginning and make that 10 seconds back in my next attempt. There's a bit of a safety net there. It's a little bit more on your own accord, on your own personal level, and by your own rules, whereas when it comes to a race, just about anything goes, and there is no reset button anymore, so you do have to play by the rules, and you do just have to keep pushing through and, maintaining your level of tilt, maintaining your composure, and maybe even kind of manipulating how your opponent plays depending on what you do can really ultimately change the course of the race.
Yep. And meanwhile, we've got Fur successfully got his 5 moons before the mech fight at the end of this kingdom. And Rail pretty well right on his tail, just now grabbing his own 5th moon as for going to be entering this mech fight. In many ways, this is kind of, I mean, it's certainly a big moment. I am a little bit hesitant to say, but it may be kind of the last really huge opportunity for Rhea to make up a lot of time if Fur ends up making a considerable mistake here. It's certainly going to be very iffy for Rhea to be able to pull out a win if Fur makes it past this in a Moon Kingdom on this pace, but certainly not impossible. Fur already with 2 hits on the Brutal Mech, gonna have to join for the Buck and Bronco phase and just wait for the iframes to end. I definitely wish that there was some sort of way that you could get a really, really fast hit on Harriet or something like that to just completely skip this interphase, but unfortunately, I don't think anything like that will be found. I'm pretty sure they both become invincible right whenever the second one dies.
Yep, I believe you're right about that.
Let's see, target acquired is good. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
And just like that, Fur showing no signs of slowing down. Rhea going to be following behind, and honestly, we are only 2 Robo Brutal hits away from each other here, so this race really is much closer than some of the others that we've seen in recent history. So all it really would take for Fur to lose his lead would be to die in any of these upcoming moon sections. And even something like missing a Bowser phase, which can lose you anywhere between like 8 to 12 seconds, that in itself is all it would take for Rhea to inch 1 step closer to bringing back the lead for himself.
Yep, I mean, it's certainly nowhere near over. Even once they get to the pillar rooms, if Rhea ends up making up a pretty considerable amount of ground, you can easily lose 3-4 seconds in pillar rooms without even having to go back around for that first pillar. And that's something that if you miss enough shots on that first pillar, bam, you've lost 15 seconds by having to come back around for it at the end. And just with having to go towards it at the beginning like you do, it's just there's so much all the way through the very last input of this run that can lose you so many seconds whenever you're still this close in a race setting.
We'll have a little bit of a better indicator of just how far apart these guys are as they begin their globing here. So Rhea actually hitting the globe as Fur is in his banner, so we are about 26 seconds apart here as we approach the Moon Kingdom. So yeah, if Fur were to mess up even 2 phases of the Bowser fight, we would be neck and neck all of a sudden again. So it really is that close, and anything can happen.
Yeah, but let's see what the outcome is as for getting real close to his first moon-based input. And Moon Kingdom always a little bit unsettling when you very first start it because of that difference in gravity. And having, I mean, at this level, obviously you've put a lot of practice into this section and kind of adapting to it, but it's still just a little bit weird taking those first steps after playing through the entire 55 minutes of the previous run at normal gravity.
Yep, using the vectors to your advantage though here.
Yeah, and because of that low gravity, you actually have a lot more room to vector here, which is pretty well why this is the only. Plus, I mean, in a lot of other cases, you're never traversing this enormous patch of ground ever again. Like in most kingdoms, you're making relatively short paths between your moons and other objectives, but here you just have this massive space to cover. So it really just makes sense to do these jump vectors here to save a pretty considerable amount of time. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are some places in this game where you would get 4 moons in the span of distance that Ray had just passed in that middle platform that had those flowers on it. I'm sure of 3. I don't know for complete certain about 4, but I know of 3.
Yeah, luckily in any percent don't need any moons, however, at all. So you can kind of just go about your day, go directly towards the end, and for underscore the first to approach this Bowser fight. Rhea entering the cathedral as he gets his first hit. Now, this fight, very similar, of course, to the Cloud fight. Basically getting right up in Bowser's face, doing a backflip at the right time to capture the hat before Bowser's able to take it from you, and then use it to punch him and initiate the next phase of the fight. The only difference here, and actually one that I would argue makes the fight a little bit easier to execute on, is this phase of Bowser throwing his fire breath at you. The fire breath is a lot less intimidating than it looks, to say the least, but it also gives you a little bit of time to kind of follow Bowser to the next platform, and it's much easier to time your backflips and get the hits that you need.
Yeah, and it's you don't have to worry at all about that optimization of him jumping to a specific platform. Just have to dodge that fire that I think internally it's just a line on the ground. It's not actually, it doesn't have any depth at all. So as long as you are off the ground, I think you'll actually be able to jump over it. If that's not the case, it's a very thin depth. Every runner has their own particular way of just passing the time, having to deal with that jump. Like I personally side flip over it. It just, I don't know, feels kind of good.
Yep, certainly. So
I've even seen people do spins over it, and that's usually kind of cool to see.
Yeah, just a little ballet action. Why not? So for the first into the escape sequence here, only a couple of real obstacles in his way towards the end of this game, the first being the 2D skip that he's going to approach here. And, you know, as much as I want to say these runners have it under their belts, these guys know exactly what they're doing and have 100% confidence in this trick. You know, we've seen the opposite in these leagues. We've seen some people take a stumble. We've seen some crazier things happen. So, you know, Fur probably has that in the back of his mind as he approaches this now.
Okay, so he's making the approach, got the hole. First jump is good, and it's clean. Okay, after you get that first jump out from under that roof, that's really, I mean, if you hit that first block and end up losing all of your vertical height, that's where it's really over. The other jumps can be pretty precise too, but really that first one is the main one that you see people having issues with, and Fur just demonstrating why he is considered one of the best at this game, having no trouble whatsoever. Also, let's just mention at least briefly that fireball timing. That was just beautiful. Perfect distancing going into that last section all the way over to the crystal wall. Rhea also getting 2D skip though. Unfortunately, not quite close enough of a run for, and Fur getting very good first pillar right there. You can see the camera kind of being forced to pan a little bit to the right, proving that he got that hit. So it's pretty well over for Rhea, but taking home a pretty considerable number of points. Looks like he's going to be in about the 3rd or 4th bracket, either 20 to 30 or 30 to 40 seconds away from first time. But it does kind of come down a little bit at least to the pillar room. Taking this angle here, looks like he got his requisite shots in, not entirely. Okay, the camera's panning out, so that means it's good. And let's see how the rest of these pillars go. Accidentally bypassing it before getting that 4th claw, having to do the turnaround there. Fur finishing up with a 31. So the clock is now ticking for Rhea's points. So at 41, he's fallen out of the first bracket for points for this league match. So looks like he's just barely going to miss that second little bracket. So it's going to come down to whether he's getting 3rd or 4th, which either of them is a pretty great result for a race, and especially one that was as tight as it was throughout this entire duration. You typically see at least a little bit more variation. Rhea clocking in at a 101.59. That is going to solidify for him a kind of 3rd place, if you will, of losing in the points of the league. And let's see if we can get these guys in for interviews now after what was a pretty stellar race.
Yep. So of the 20 points available, Fur will be taking home 17. Or no, sorry. Fur will be taking home 3 of them. Rhea will be taking home 17. So very solid performance from both runners. Definitely can't be understated. Getting a 101 in a race is not an easy feat. And for what this race really was, it all came down to who made the bigger of the smallest mistakes, because there weren't really any to speak of. There weren't really any huge mistakes to speak of. It was just kind of losing 2 seconds here, losing maybe 3 seconds here. It was just a combination of minor things that all added up in this run, and I would be very surprised if either of these guys is disappointed in their performance this run.
Yeah, it's certainly not. I mean, I would be completely fine with either of these runs being any given race run or PB of mine, honestly. I mean, I'm sure many people watching would agree, but it really can't be understated how minor most of their mistakes were. And to kind of comment on their performance, we've got first Rhea. So what are your thoughts on that race? How are you feeling right now after that's over?
I actually thought it was pretty good. Other than that lake clip mistake, I thought it was pretty good.
It looked really good. We were kind of mentioning that it was really a competition of who made the bigger mistakes out of the small mistakes that were made, because there wasn't really anything huge or substantial to really talk about here. Nothing really lost any more than maybe 15 seconds.
Yeah. I kind of brought it back in the late game, though. Bowser's was really good, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, definitely agree there. And I mean, both of your mech fights were just exceptional. Now, I mean, about that late clip, did you realize that checkpoint had failed immediately, or did it kind of take you a second to realize?
Immediately, yeah. I was a bit too far to the right, so yeah, I just kind of missed it.
Ah, I see. Because I actually didn't realize it at first. Danger was the one that had to point it out, and after that, I was like, oh yeah, I never did see that text, but you really did pull it back a lot. I mean, the rest of the run was super solid. Is there anything that you're particularly proud of throughout the back half of that, especially?
Not really.
I mean, like you said, that Bowser's was exceptional, and then I mean, just a lot of different stuff just went really well for you overall. Kind of a shame that the result was an L, but you know, at least you're not walking away completely empty-handed. Now, after this, do you have to know who your next opponent will be?
I don't know, actually.
Well, do you think that this is kind of going to dampen a little bit of your momentum going into that next race, or actually kind of, you know, keep it steady or maybe even improve it?
I think it's going to be about the same, so...
Well, that's great to hear. I'm certainly looking forward to it. Any plans on what to practice going forward after this run?
Definitely lake clip.
Well, I think pretty well everyone could afford at least a little bit of practice with that. Just kind of ridiculous. It's just ridiculous stuff there. Especially, it's a shame to fail it the way that you ended up failing it, where you get that really hard out of neutral jump, and then suddenly the wall kick just doesn't work, and you're just like, wow, really? But if Dangers, did you have anything else for Rhea while we had him with us?
You know, I think he put in a very solid effort, and 101.59 is nothing to sneeze at. Definitely a good showing for a race time. So GG's to you, Rhea. And we do not have Fur coming in for an interview. It does look like he is a busy boy and does need to jet. So that will be it from us here for Super Mario Odyssey. Coming up on GSA in 20 minutes, we have some Super Mario 64 70-star League action coming your way between Pete and Drogi. You do not want to miss that. But until next time, I have been Dangers, and I am here with Electric, and we are signing off for now. Take care, everybody, and see you later.
Yep, we hope you stick around, but if not, thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.